Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. Good morning, everyone. It's finally sweater weather. My favorite kind of weather. Last night we did a repentance ceremony where we bow 108 plus times. So it's usually a pretty good workout when you're sweating a lot. I kept the door open last night, so it'd be nice and cool in here as I'm sweating. That was nice. But I'm loving this weather. It's my favorite. Alrighty, so today we're going to continue our discussion on the Satipatthana Sutra, or the four foundations of mindfulness, and we are on the third foundation of mind. So we've already discussed in detail the first two, body and feelings, and today we're going to go through mind, and the last one is objects of mind, which we'll discuss in our last class before a big retreat on the 10th of December. So I'm not going to reiterate back again, but if you've missed those classes, feel free to go back to our YouTube channel. It has all our classes, that way you're not missing out. Since our retreat is mainly going to focus on these four foundations of mindfulness, and all our practices and meditations are going to concentrate on these four foundations. So today we're going to go over the observing of mind, and the third foundation. The third foundation of mind is pretty much anything that arises in mind. Anything that is mental, physical, physiological. These are the aspects that we are going to pay super attention to. And all the contents of our mind are, are all psychological phenomena, right? They're all mental formations. And feeling, the second foundation, is technically also a mental formation, but there's so much to feelings that it's in its own category. But everything that arises in our mind is a mental formation. Every thought, every perception, idea, good, bad, etc., etc. They're all mental formations, right? And so our objective here is to watch those mental formations, so to watch those things that arise in our mind, and to observe them mindfully, so that we can react and live about our lives according to wholesome practices, right? So in different traditions and schools of Buddhism, they will list different numbers and categories of mental formations, right? Some have 51, some have 55, some have 31, 32, doesn't matter. But in the Satipatthana Sutra, the Four Foundation Mindfulness Sutra that we're focusing on, they list 28 mental formations, and I will list them here. Because again, this time around in our meditation class, session, semester, we're focusing on the Vipassana side of meditation, right? So the first half of the year, we went over Samatha, or concentration meditation, going over the Satipatthana Sutra. And this time around is Vipassana. So in concentration meditation, your main objective is to concentrate on the one object of meditation. In that case was our breath, right? So as we're breathing, we're only focusing on our breathing. Any distraction that arises, any thoughts, any sounds, whatever, we are simply making a label and going back to our object of meditation. Now, however, we're doing kind of the opposite. So we will start with our object of meditation of breathing, but then whatever arises during that meditation, we're going to shift our concentration from our breath to whatever that distraction is. So if it's a thought of hunger, a thought of discomfort, whatever it is, you're going to sit with that and allow that to be your object of meditation until it passes. And then you go back to your breathing, right? And you're kind of going back and forth, back and forth. And the objective of this is to see and observe how our mind works, where things are coming from, where our reactions are arising from, where feelings are coming from, the root causes, right? We're trying to find root causes of specific mental formations. So in today's class, we're going to focus mostly on the mental formation of anger. since that is something that every single human being in the world experiences, so it's the most relevant to anybody. But let me first go over the 20 mental formations. That way you at least have an idea of kind of like a spark. So as these feelings or emotions arise in you, you can say, oh, this is a mental formation, let me concentrate on it, right? Anyway, so the list is desire, anger, ignorance, disturbance, narrowness, limitedness, lack of concentration, lack of freedom, dullness and drowsiness, agitation and remorse, doubt, and their opposites of not desiring, not hating, non-ignorance, non-disturbance, tolerance, unlimitedness, concentration, freedom, absence of doubt, absence of dullness and drowsiness, absence of agitation, and mindfulness, disaster, peace, joy, ease, and letting go. So it's a big list, but it all comes down to whether things are positive, negative, or neutral, right? There's literally a plethora of feelings and emotions in the world, but everything comes down to one of those three categories, either good, bad, or neutral, right? And so in this, as we've discussed last time, each of the foundations have several exercises that the Buddha taught. And in this foundation, there's only 3 exercises. I'm not going to list them all, but I will recite the first exercise. It's slightly lengthy, but it'll give you an idea of how to observe and notate these emotions or objects of mind as they arise, right? Because there's a specific formula in these exercises that the Buddha taught on how to recognize what is there and what is not there. So this is exercise number 13, about observing the desiring mind. And the discourse goes, when his mind is desiring, the practitioner is aware, my mind is desiring. When his mind is not desiring, he is aware, my mind is not desiring. When his mind is hating something, he is aware, my mind is hating. When his mind is not hating, he is aware, my mind is not hating. When his mind is in a state of ignorance, he is aware, my mind is in a state of ignorance. When his mind is not in a state of ignorance, he is aware, my mind is not in a state of ignorance. When his mind is tense, he is aware, my mind is tense. When his mind is not tense, he is aware, my mind is not tense. When his mind is distracted, he is aware, my mind is distracted. When his mind is not distracted, he is aware, my mind is not distracted. When his mind has a wider scope, he is aware, my mind is widened in scope. When his mind has a narrow scope, he is aware, my mind has become narrow in scope. When his mind is capable of reaching a higher state, he is aware, my mind is capable of reaching a higher state. When his mind is not capable of reaching a higher state, he is aware, my mind is not capable of reaching a higher state. When his mind is composed, he is aware, my mind is composed. When his mind is not composed, he is aware, my mind is not composed. When his mind is free, he is aware, my mind is free. When his mind is not free, he is aware, my mind is not free. So that exercise should give you an idea of how to list things as they arise, right? It's one thing to say, my mind is in a state of hatred or anger, right? You're pinpointing what you're going through at that moment. But on the other side of that, when your mind is not in a state of anger, you also want to notate that as well. I'm not angry right now. I'm actually happy. I'm peaceful. I have some joy, right? Because we forget about those peaceful moments. We forget that we're not angry or in a state of ignorance or hatred 24/7, right? We only notice them when they arise. And we forget about the good times when we're not angry. We forget about it. Like, I'm never not angry. I'm always angry. That's not true. We only notice anger when it arises, but we also need to notice when there's not anger as well, right? Otherwise, if you're just waiting around to be angry, or for something big to be noticeable for you to make a notation or observance of it, you're just, what are you doing, right? So even in states of dullness, of mundaneness, make those notes. Observe your mind in those states as well. And desire here means to be caught in unwholesome longing. So form, sound, smell, taste, and touch, these are all objects of the 5 kinds of sense desires, right? And these are desires for money, sex, fame, good food, and sleep. These 5 categories of desire produce obstacles on the path of practice, as well as any kinds of physical and mental suffering. And the Buddha has given this quote on many occasions where he says, "True happiness is a life with few desires, few possessions, and the time to enjoy the many wonders in us and around us." And he makes this observance because, again, he's reminding us that not everything in life has to be negative. Life is suffering. There's suffering in life, but there's also non-suffering in life. There are bad days, but there's also good in every bad day, right? And so it's not important, and it's not only important to observe and be aware of what is negatively happening, but it's also important to be aware of what is positively happening. Yes, I'm having a bad day, but there is still good in this day. You're alive, you're breathing, you have clothes on, you have a vehicle, you have transportation, you have whatever it may be, right? We forget about these little nuances that we have in life, the little things that are actually helpful or enjoyable, right? Oh, I burned my food. Now you're pissed off. I have no food. Well, be glad that you have food in the first place. Be glad you had an opportunity to be able to purchase the food, to buy the food, to cook the food, to eat the food. Versus how many millions of people who don't have that opportunity. We live in a very selfish society, unfortunately, right? But in a privileged society. And so we only pay attention to the bad things that happen to us. We don't pay attention to the good things. And if we do, it's for like a hot minute before we forget about it. I got a new job. Okay, I got a new job. Got a new car. Okay, got a new car. But if something major happens, you lost your job, you lost your car, now you're going to be suffering for as long as you allow it to be, right? We get excited about the new things for what? You got a new phone. Okay, you're excited about it, you're doing what you need to do with it for a week, a month maybe, and then forget about it. It's just another phone, right? You totally forget that it's a new phone. Same thing with a car. You get a new car, you baby it, you clean it every day, you're detailing it, but after a few months, it looks like you live in your car, right? The whole newness of it is gone, right? So we go through those states and stages of life, right? That's why we say in meditate. That's why we emphasize mindfulness so much. It's because if you're not mindful as much as you can be, you're going to forget about the good things in life and only pay attention to the bad, right? When we have a toothache, we're complaining that we have a toothache, and we wish we never had a toothache. But then in the times when we don't have a toothache, are we ever wishing that you had a toothache? No, you forget about the joys of not having a toothache, right? Nobody wants a toothache. Nobody wants a headache. You're having a migraine, you're wishing you didn't have a migraine, you're wishing you have a headache. You're wishing for the longing of just having a peaceful, calm, non-pounding head. But then on a day where you don't have a headache, are you grateful that you don't have a headache? Probably not. So if we're able to be mindful and be aware of those little things, then as we start practicing that more routinely, it becomes habitual, becomes automatic. That way, in occasions or in situations where negativity arises, like anger, we're able to be a little bit more mindful, be able to be aware of what's causing this anger. All anger is within you. It is of you. It is you, right? Society and other things outside of you are the secondary reasons or causes, but you are the main cause of your own anger. And so when anger arises, that's why we need to be aware of it as soon as possible before we allow the anger to kind of take over, right? And in the next exercise 14, observing anger, the Buddha says, when anger is present in him, he is aware, anger is present in me. When anger is not present in him, he is aware, anger is not present in me. When anger begins to arise, he is aware of it. When already arisen, anger is abandoned, he is aware of it. When anger already abandoned will not arise again in the future, he is aware of it. So in this exercise, the Buddha is reminding us again that we need to be mindful in the moment, in times where anger is not there. If you're not angry, let's make a quick note. I'm not angry. I'm not feeling anger, right? You're adding these little things to be mindful. You're adding these little mental mindfulness exercises, right? It's difficult to be mindful 24/7, obviously, but if you're at least able to remind yourself to be mindful as you do things, as you go through life, as you cook or clean or drive or walk or study, if you're able to make those mental notations of how you're feeling in that moment, then it just becomes easier to be more mindful 24/7, right? It becomes easier to be mindful in states of anger or hatred or ignorance or whatever it may be. And then another benefit of being able to observe that presence of anger is if we're able to identify that anger, then it loses some of its destructive nature, right? Because anger, for most people, it takes over you, right? It takes over us when we're angry sometimes. We are angry to the point where we are yelling, we're fighting, we're just saying and doing horrible things that we're going to later regret, right? We allow that anger to take over, to take control of the situation, versus letting your actual self take over the situation, or letting the anger take over the situation. And after you've said and done things out of anger, you're most likely going to regret it, right? I'm pretty sure every one of us has said or done something, and later on we're like, oh crap, I probably shouldn't have said that or done that, right? It's inevitable. It always happens. But if we're able to diligently practice our mindfulness and awareness, then we're able to catch those things before it comes out of our mouth, before our body reacts to it. That way, you're able to calm yourself enough to objectively go through the situation and think of what needs to be done accordingly, appropriately. That's appropriate for this situation. Again, like I mentioned last time, that we don't want to suppress any of the anger, right? But we also don't want to express that anger either. America, either. It's actually either. British is either. I learned that a few days ago. I think. Maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's English. Point is, it's what? Either one. It's either or either. But if we're able to shed that light of mindfulness on our anger to see what its root cause is, then it's easier for us to kind of calm down a bit, right? Imagine if you're walking into a dark room. Typically, we're a little frightened, we're a little weary about what's happening, what's in here. We don't know what we're going to be stepping on or walking into. And maybe we step on something and we start freaking out. And we're like, oh my God, there's a snake or an alligator biting on my foot. If you turn the light on, you'll see it's just a piece of Lego or something, right? I don't know. But it's the same thing with our anger. If we just react to our anger blindly and not knowing what the root cause of it, we're going to just simply react more negatively toward it. We're going to start making excuses. We're going to start blaming. But if you shed the light of anger on it, then you can see, oh, it's the Lego that's hurting. It's not some made-up manifestation I just made, or whatever it may be, right? The point is here is to find that root cause of the anger, because there is a root cause of anger. You're not just angry out of nothingness. It didn't come from nothingness, from nowhere. There's a reason for that anger. And part of our practice is to find that root cause. What is causing this anger? Why is it here? Why is it making me feel this way? Why is it making me react this way? If you don't find that root cause, then every time a similar situation arises, that same anger is just going to resurface, right? If you're angry when you start to go into your room and shut the door and yell into a pillow, right? You're going to exhaust yourself, and the anger may subside, but it's still there. You've only relieved the exhaustion from the screaming into your pillow, but the anger is still there, right? And so later on, if you're in similar situations where the causes or the conditions are right, then that anger is just going to resurface again, right? So instead of pushing it back down, letting it arise, pushing it back, letting it arise, we need to attack that anger when we have the chance to, and find what the root cause is, find where it's coming from, find or figure out why it's causing us such suffering. It's not always an easy task. Sometimes it'll take many sessions to figure it out, right? Sometimes you'll be like, oh, it's the other person. They are causing the suffering. They're doing this to me. They're doing this to other people, right? Yeah, they may be doing something that's causing you anger, but the action that they're doing is not the root cause of the anger. Most likely, the root cause of the anger is our own expectation of that person, or our expectations of the situation, our expectation of how we want things to be. Right? And so when those expectations are not met, then we're going to blame that person. We're going to start being angry at them because they're not doing things or saying things that we want them to say or do. It's going against our expectations of them. So them denying something to you, for instance, or saying something bad about you, whether it's true or not, is not the actual reason that you're angry. Part of it is ego. How dare you call me that name? How dare you say this about me? How dare you blah, 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 right? But another more prominent, dominant piece of it is our expectation. Especially if it's coming from someone that you may love or trust or consider a friend or a colleague, right? We have certain expectations of people to treat us with respect, to treat us with dignity, to treat us equally, right? And when those expectations are not met, when they go against those expectations, then we feel attacked. We feel angry, right? We have some hatred or disappointment toward that person. So part of our practice, like that very last formation of letting go is letting go of those expectations. Because we know that expectations are just frivolous hopes and dreams.
Disappointments waiting to happen.
Exactly. Disappointments waiting to happen. And that's one of the main reasons of our suffering in life, is those expectations are not being met. Suffering doesn't mean physical suffering. I mean, it's part of it, right? Someone hits you, you get hurt, that's suffering. But most of our suffering is mental suffering, the mental formations that cause us the suffering. A mental formation of hatred, of desire, of jealousy, of anger, of even joy and happiness can be suffering. But all these come down to what our expectations are in life. You have the expectation of having a functional car to go to work, to go to school, to have a social life. You have expectations of being paid when you work. You have expectations of your significant other caring and loving you. You have all these expectations. And the moment something goes against that expectation is broken, or against what you want it to be, what happens? You get angry about it. You get upset. Why are you doing this? Why are you saying this? This is not what you should be saying or doing. According to whom? To you. Who are you? Not that you're not important. You are. Your expectations are not. Your expectations are made up by yourself, by your own mind, by the ego. The ego is the unfortunate master of us. I think I've said it several times. We think that we are the master of our minds, but you're not. Your ego is the master for now. So part of our practice is to start to cut off the power that this ego has on us. Because our ego is what causes those expectations to happen in the first place. If you're driving on the road, someone cuts you off, your ego's like, oh, how dare you cut me off? Who do you think you are to cut me off? My time is just as, if not more important than yours. I have a nicer car. If you almost hit me, I would have, right? We make up all these excuses. We make up all these what ifs and buts and ands and whatever, right? But none of that's true. None of that's real. That's just our ego trying to defend itself. We have an expectation of not being cut off. Where does this expectation come from? Our ego. Our ego is unfortunately an unfortunate, deeply rooted seed within us that is not easily let go. It's probably easier to win the lottery than it is to get rid of your ego. I wish I was a $2 billion winner, but whatever. That's my ego wishing for it, right? But fortunately, since anger is such a prominent force in most people, the Buddha gives us an antidote. And this antidote is meditation on love, or loving kindness and compassion, metta meditation, where we focus on loving kindness and compassion. Loving kindness is this desire for people's peace and happiness and tranquility, right? Compassion is the desire for them to be free of suffering. And so when you practice this meditation, we are going against our egotistical thinking of, because they're a bad person, they don't deserve love. They don't deserve peace. They don't deserve compassion, right? But in this meditation, you attempt to put yourselves in their shoes, in their place, right? To kind of see their life from their perspective in order for us to build that love and compassion for them. Because we think these are just terrible people, right? We think that because they're doing so many things that are negative or bad towards you or to others, you think that they're a terrible person. that they just have absolutely no love or joy in their life. And this is why they're acting out. But we truly don't know. We're not in their mind. We can't read their mind. We don't know what they're actually going through. What we do know for sure is that they are suffering. We don't know, we may not know how or why, but we absolutely have to come to the conclusion that they are suffering. If someone is causing you suffering, it definitely means that they are also suffering. Them causing you suffering is just their way of reacting to their own suffering, because they don't know how to observe. They don't know how to be mindful. They don't know how to be aware of their suffering, and so they're acting out. So when we practice this love meditation, we put ourselves in their perspective and see what is going on in their lives. This is we have to add a little imagination and things in here, because we can't know for sure what is causing their suffering. But if we're able to contemplate and really try to put ourselves and see them from their perspective, and kind of go over of how they live or react or say things, it may give us clues as to how or why they're suffering. We may figure out that maybe it's because they had bad parents, or their parents weren't around very much, right? Or their parents didn't teach them the right things, right? That could also be a cause because their parents did the same thing to them, right? Maybe they weren't raised right, or they weren't there for them, or whatever it may be. And so it becomes a generational thing, right? So the suffering just goes from one generation to the next. But because you have the power of observation, you have the power of mindfulness and awareness, you can see that and stop it in its tracks so that generational suffering doesn't continue on. And so that hopefully will give you the aha moment of, okay, this is why they're suffering, maybe, right? And you apply the loving kindness and compassion toward them to release that negativity you have against them, in order to be like, okay, they are suffering, they're also human beings, I can't keep this negativity against them. Otherwise, you're just doing the same thing that they're doing. You're just reacting negativity with negativity. You're reacting anger with anger, hatred with hatred. It doesn't solve anything. That doesn't help either party. And so when we practice meditation, the specific meditation is to focus on someone that, first you focus on yourself, right? Because in order to help others, you have to help yourself first, for the most part, right? And so in meditation, because there's two meditations, compassion and loving kindness. And loving kindness and metta is when you focus on yourself, right? And you're reminding yourself, may I be happy, may I be well, may I be free from suffering, may my mind be at ease, right? You go through these mantras. And then you move on to someone you love, a significant other, a parent, a sibling, a child. May they be happy, may they be well, may they be free from suffering, may their mind be at ease. And you go through those mantras, and you skip to someone that is a friend or an acquaintance or a neighbor, right? Someone you're not super close with. You repeat to yourself, may they be well, may they be happy, may they be free of suffering, may their mind be at ease. You continue that line. You continue to the mailman, to the cashier, to the air flight attendant, to people you don't know, to people you don't like, right? You continue that mantra. And the same for a thing with compassion. And so when you meditate on compassion, you can start with someone that you know is suffering, right? It can be a sibling, a child, significant other, and you meditate on their suffering. You acknowledge that they are suffering, and that you wish that they would not suffer, right? Because we know that they are suffering, whether we like them or not, right? It should envelop this feeling of truly wanting them to not be suffering. Because if someone is causing you suffering, it's because of their suffering. So if you're able to acknowledge and see their suffering, help them with their suffering, to lessen it, to lessen the suffering, then they will start to output that suffering onto others, right? You're essentially putting out the fire, or helping them put out the fire of their suffering. It's not always an easy task. Sometimes people don't want help, right? But we can at least use this practice in order to at least react accordingly, react correctly, react with awareness and mindfulness when they attempt to cause us suffering. A lot of times when people are like, when they ask, how do you practice Buddhism? Or how do you explain Buddhism? And most of the time I'm like, well, you don't. You don't tell people what Buddhism is or how to be a Buddhist. You show them. You show them by your mindfulness. You show them by your awareness. You show them by how you respond to situations. So if someone's yelling at you or angrily or whatever it may be, and you're responding with composure and with calmness, then they can see that what they're doing is not causing a reaction in you. Because most of the time when people are trying to fight you, they want a reaction, right? So if you don't fuel what they're wanting, then they're going to stop. Or they may reconsider what they're doing, what they're saying, and notice that, okay, you're not reacting how I want you to react. You're not saying what I think you were going to say or do what I thought you were going to do. And so that causes them to reflect on what they're doing. Right? So if someone's yelling at you and you're not responding the same way and you're just composed and calm, they're going to be like, they're probably going to feel a little uneasy and question themselves and question why they're reacting the way they are, and cause them to reflect, self-reflect. And in that way, you help them.
You're bringing them to mindfulness, correct?
Exactly. You're bringing them to mindfulness as well. So part of our practice is to be mindful enough to remind ourselves not to react in the way that people want us to react sometimes. Another objective of our observance here is to deeply understand ourselves, right? That's the whole point of meditation, Buddhist meditation at least, is to understand ourselves, understand how our mind works and why it works in certain ways. Because if we don't know how anything works, how are you going to fix it? You can't fix a car if you don't know how the mechanics work. You can't solve an equation if you don't know how the math works. You can't cook a meal if you don't know the ingredients or what to put into the meal, right? Because learning meditation is, never mind. Yeah, learning meditation is like reading a cookbook, right? Practicing meditation is like making the meal. But enlightenment, or the aha moments, is knowing how the food tastes. But you can't know how the food tastes if you don't make the meal. If you just read the recipe and see a recipe on fried chicken or something, you don't know what it tastes like. And you can't know what it tastes like until you cook it, until you try it. So the same thing with meditation. You can read meditation all you want. You can superficially understand the concepts and the objectives and the reasons and blah, blah, blah. But until you do it, until you put it into action, until you come to the state of acceptance and awareness, then you know the benefits of it. Now you know how enlightenment tastes. And it will taste sweet. Okay, I'll stop there. What questions do you have? Concerns? Emotional outbursts?
I've had experiences this week that are right on topic, and I'm trying to focus myself through them. At work, I was providing feedback, and it was about a run-on sentence.
About a what?
A run-on sentence.
Okay.
In a Teams message. Yeah.
Okay.
It was done intentionally to see if I would be provoked, and the only provoke that I had was to say, actually, I love to share that I corrected my run-on sentence. And this leader said, oh no, that's talk back, that's not accepting feedback, and decided to send it up to my manager and my manager's manager. And my manager's manager came to me and said, you need to learn to accept feedback. And it got to the point where I was again facing the same conversation where I finally just shared a screen, and he realized in that moment that he was trying to provoke me as well. And instead of provoking me, he realized he had to accept the fact that I was not doing something that was rude, or it was just trying to create emotion. And I said, I honestly feel that someone's just trying to provoke emotion. And he said nothing to that because I think he was scared. And I'm at the point now where after speaking with former leaders within the company that have left the company, they're telling me I should go to human resources. And I want your opinion from the perspective of Buddhism. I feel like that's just throwing more oil into the fire. But from my former manager's perspective, that's no longer with the company, he says that this is actually putting like a cover over the fire, because if the cover is there for myself, then the flame shouldn't bother anyone anymore. And so I'm not quite sure how this should be perceived, but it's definitely a conflict, like antagonistic type of thing that's happening.
There's so much feeling and pain.
Yeah.
25 years in a corporate job. Exactly what you're saying.
And it's subjective. That's the thing in my opinion. They're saying it's my tone. So my tone right now that I have is considered offensive.
That's actually kind of funny. So yesterday? No, it was not yesterday. It was Thursday. I was talking to someone, and I remember I was telling them a story about back in the day, I was working on a team, and I guess the team I don't remember what the situation was. I think we met goal or met objectives or something, right? And I was like, oh, okay, cool, where's our cake? Just where's our cake, right? Apparently later on, another manager came by and was like, hey, that was a little disrespectful, unprofessional. I'm like, what are you talking about? I literally just asked, are we having cake? Like, how's that unprofessional and disrespectful? But it goes back to people's expectations, right? Especially when people are in a position of power, right? Sometimes it gets to them. Sometimes they think they can get away with things, right? And so they're going to provoke and push and make you aware that they are in power, right? So sounds like a situation that they're doing just that. They want to make sure that you know that they're in charge. And so now they're threatening you, and now other people are coming to you and saying blah, 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 right? You're not accepting feedback. That's really just their fault, their problem, not your problem. But at the same time, there's also ways to acknowledge that professionally, right? I don't know what your immediate response was, but I've learn to always say, okay, I appreciate the feedback, thank you. Here's my notations for it, right? And so from a professional perspective, you say, thanks for the feedback, I appreciate your time to go over these points with me, and then you make your own points, right? On the spiritual path of that, side of that, you acknowledge that this is simply their expectations being projected onto you. Your expectations are not their expectations, right? And so when there's a conflict of expectations, then that happens, right? They're telling you something, you're saying something back, and they're taking it the wrong way. But again, that's not your problem. Their expectations are not your problem. Your only problem is your own reaction to their expectations, right? Because they're projecting your expectations on you, they're also expecting a specific type of response, right? So whether
her going to HR would be their expected response, right?
Right.
So that's all part of the whole game.
They're expected, yeah. Part of their expectation is you retaliating, right? And them saying, "Oh, that's talking back," right? They probably wanted that. Another expectation, someone else telling you to go to HR. So, I mean, I can tell you what to do. It's your career, but just know that this is what you're going through is not. What they are trying to make you go through is not your problem. You do what you need to do. And make sure that they know that whatever they're saying or doing to you is not it's a nice word. That you won't be provoked what they're trying to push onto you. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to provoke you. Don't let that happen. Just like, cool, thanks. Thanks for the feedback. Peace out.
I think you did wonderfully by just saying, here's the truth. It's all, it's plain to see. If you can't see that, then that's your problem or mine. It doesn't make it easy for them. And so I think the other thing is from the Buddhist perspective, we talk about how, if you've got a friend, a so-called friend, who's abusing you all the time, at some point you might say, I need to separate myself from this person. So you might need to separate yourself either from your manager or maybe from the job. And it's difficult too. It's very difficult too.
See, I would go back to the root cause, and like you said, a couple of things, like first is compassion, dealing with compassion, like dealing with those people with the compassion, even like if they're trying to work you or whatever, that's one. And then the second thing is the root cause. So like, you try to find the root cause in you, not in them. And they talk about the children, they talk about all those things. Take as the feedback, take them all as the feedback. And that's the proper word. Like Leon said, it's if you can't fight against that. So
it's not the real world.
It's not, it's not really, even like outside the corporate world, and everything is going to be same. But dealing with compassion, and then second thing is try to find the root cause in yourself, not in them. So the issue of tone, issue of all those things, you could try to correct them as much as you could. So it's not like, anything going okay, I'm not working on this, or try to fix that problem. If somebody noticing it or finding out, so like you say, no, I told it all right, I'm doing all good. You are wrong, that's not another help.
But they don't want to be told they're wrong either, right? So it seems like taking it to HR, that's almost like going to a court where the judge has had a bad judgment on you. Going back to the same judge and saying, but judge, I committed injustice here. Most HR departments aren't there to really help the employees, right? They're there so the company can say, we care about our employees.
it does not work that way in any corporation or anywhere, and that's called suffering. That's why everybody gets to suffer through that process. So that's what we did. That's what we teach.
As soon as you walk in that HR door, then you've got the letter there.
Yeah.
That's just insane. That's insane.
Yeah. You have to watch your reactions, right? Because your reactions are your problem, right? Expectations of others are not your problem. But your reactions to what they're doing, what they're saying, and their expectations is your problem, right? So the suffering that comes from what they're doing to you is not because of what they're doing. It's because of you not understanding, or at least having some mental ignorance of the expectation of the situation, right? They're saying this and your reaction to it, and you thinking that's not how you say it is, right? Their reaction to your reaction is you're talking back, right? And so now your reaction to their reaction of you talking back is another reaction, and you just go back and forth, right? It just gets deeper and deeper. But your reaction to their expectations is a root cause that you need to find within yourself, right? So it's a self-reflection exercise for you. Why am I reacting this way? What is causing me to react in a way that I feel like it's the opposite of what they're telling me it is? They're telling me that I'm talking back. I feel like I'm not talking back. Why?
Because I've been in abusive situations with this particular company before.
Why?
Because I'm a top performer and I am in a situation where they have to provide me with bigger financial incomes.
Why?
Because it's with their expectations that they place on themselves that they cannot fulfill.
Why?
Because the company isn't able to sustain the profits that they're supposed to right now.
Why?
Because we're going through a recession right now.
Why?
Because our country is part of this economic circle that's all going through interest hikes by power.
Why?
Because we created an environment where we want greed over just status quo.
Why?
Because that is what our society is founded on.
Why?
Because society decided.
Why?
Because it's a image that they created that was set forth for expectations of inviting more people to want to come to our country.
I can ask 5 million more whys. The point is that initial why is so much bigger than just the small little situation it happened to, right? And so there's always a deeper meaning to everything. And part of the asking why in meditation is to observe that this small situation that aggravated me is so much bigger, with things that I cannot control, that are causing conditions that are way beyond my control, way beyond my lifetime, way beyond my capability of understanding or controlling or doing anything for, right? And so when you see that big picture of there's so many causes and conditions that I have no control over, your little situations now doesn't seem as that big of a deal, hopefully. That's the idea, right? So, because you can't control the million of causes and conditions that caused this one condition, now is your opportunity to create new causes and conditions so that flow doesn't continue on, right? So whether you react with, okay, thanks, I appreciate the feedback, and move on, or you react by going to HR, or you react by quitting, or react by not even doing anything. you have the power to either continue the process of all the crap that it caused in the first place, or you can put a stop to it. It's the same thing I was talking about earlier. If you meditate on someone and you see that they are the way that they are because of their parents, for instance, right? They didn't raise them right, they weren't there for them, whatever it may be. And their parents are like that because their parents treated them the same way too. And maybe their parents treated them the same way too. So it's a generational thing. So if you're able to see that and put a stop to it before it continues on to your own children and their children's children, then you'll stop that generational suffering, right? So now you have the same opportunity. You can either deal with it correctly or how you believe it should be dealt with, or you can let it be, let that suffering cause onto others, right? So maybe going to HR will stop that manager from doing what they did to others, right? That's the putting the pot cover on the top on the fire, right? That's blowing it out or putting it out. But if you don't, they're just going to continue to do what they did to you onto others, right? And that creates their bad habits into them, and they do that same bad habits to others, and it just continues going on. It never stops. Never stops. So we have to know and be objective and mindful and aware of what we're doing, how we're doing it, why we're doing it, and see if it's going to benefit us and others. If there's no harm created in your conclusion to yourself and to others, it's probably a good idea. If there is harm, probably not a good idea. It's kind of the main telling sign. Is there harm to myself or others? And that will typically give you the answer that you need to fulfill your duty to your job or whatever. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? Make sense?
It makes sense. It's conflicting though, because on one hand there's potential suffering for myself in the future that I can continue to be abused, and there's also the potential that even if I do speak up, I'll still continue to be abused, and then there's the potential that if I do speak up and I speak up in a fashion to say that I'm doing this because I want to help productivity and ensure that others don't suffer as I have suffered, then I can be projected in a way that can cause even more suffering for me and or others.
See, there's a lot of causes and conditions there.
So I'm going to stop and tell my brain I can't control any of it because the company could just say tomorrow with all the layoffs in the world. That's one thing. Another thing I'm looking at is I already presented to this manager that I made an attempt to say I do accept the feedback and I'd like to elaborate on what the full story is here. And I do think it's ridiculous, I use the word ridiculous, that a run-on sentence that was corrected was turned into a feedback loop, and I don't feel comfortable, and I do feel stressed, and I do think that a lot of my teammates also feel pressure or stress based off of the situation. So I feel that the buck should stop with him, and I also wrote an email to another manager outlining how I would properly structure that if it were an email versus a Teams message, so that way I showcase that I can do those skills as well. And if it does come back to me from HR, then I can say I feel that this is a retaliation and that already corrected multiple times and multiple times assured everyone that I can be a better person and not write run-on sentences.
You did what I would do. Now that I think about it.
It's just, and it's outside management to have a conversation about it because they're no longer with the company and kind of just have that moment. They were, I think, from their perspective as former management, fearing for me as they cared about me when they were part of my management team to say, maybe go to HR because if you go to HR and then something happens to you, then you do have legal rights to remedy the situation. But
I would go just to make a notation with them.
I see why you're like, right? Maybe you're right. Maybe I just creating more problems. So it's a tough one.
So I kind of feel like I should just wait to see if this is an ongoing issue that comes up again, which it may very well be, and then that's when I would say, this is repeated behavior that I feel needs to be addressed.
My assumption is if you,
It's like one leader about exactly. Just tell it to yourself, and then you can have that.
And I'm also going to have my cell phone for when I'm at work going forward. It's a personal, I'm not crazy because I feel like this is gaslighting, hallucinating type of stuff. And then also that can be used as legal means as well.
if there was an already corrective action done on their part, then okay, right? Like they've done something to remediate the misconception. But if it repeats itself, then I think that's your cue to go and be like, hey, I'm gonna make this little notation with HR or whatever. I've done that once, right? And they're like, you want to be anonymous? I'm like, I don't really care. And then she's like, okay, well, we'll put you down as anonymous. And then I remember having a meeting with my boss's boss, and I brought up the issue, and she's like, I knew you were the one with HR. I'm like, I never hit it. I was like, it was a group effort, because this whole team is bullcrap. but it may help, it may not help. You know, corporate culture is something that is out of your control if you're not in control.
We can answer only from the Buddhist perspective. Everything I was to say, the letter, all those, the procedural things. Only thing to be like you say, using those kind of words, this is ridiculous and all that. It tells you that there is no compassion here on your side. And once you cross that stage, once you miss that, means that's a retaliation. They're going to retaliate, they're going to retaliate, it's going to be argumentative, they're going to fight. So from Buddhist, like you said before, the compassion works everywhere. With your enemies, with your institutions, compassion. Once you start retaliating and use your pressure and all that, I don't think it goes anywhere from Buddhist perspective, because we are lacking so much compassion here. And in terms of provocation, people think, oh, I'm not getting provoked. But when you start writing these things, that is also provoking. Provoking doesn't mean that you are like argumenting or you're shouting, screaming at other people. It doesn't mean you are doing it. When you start writing things and things, that is provocation. So you're getting provoked. So just keep in mind.
Good point. It's a good point. I never thought about that way. Okay. That was way off topic. I mean, not really, but way off the Buddhist topic. Okay, any other questions before we sit? Well, you're already sitting, but for meditation, I mean.
I've heard you say a few times that, I guess, if I'm understanding you correctly, we as Buddhists shouldn't have expectations, because expectations don't ever happen the way they're supposed to, or that we want them to. So they will therefore lead to suffering, to do whatever you want to call it. So does that mean if we were to have expectations, we should always expect the worst when we're not disappointed?
No.
And then kind of along the same line there, you can classify an expectation as I hope this goes this way, I hope this goes that way. So are we not supposed to have hope?
No. Expectation here doesn't mean Expectations here is something that is stagnant, that's static, that's unchanging, right? And it's not that if the expectation is broken that you suffer, but it's your attachment to the expectation. And when it goes against expectation, that's when we suffer, right? You have an expectation of going to work and having 12 clients walk into your office, right? Because you're not your business. If you go to work and only 2 people show up, when you have an expectation of at least 12, right? You're like, okay, that's fine. But if you get angry about it, because you're like, I should have had 12 and only had 2. Like, what's going on? Is there something out there? Is my doors locked? Is there someone blocking my website or Google Maps or something, right? You start making excuses and threatening the outside world because of the expectation. So it's not saying that do not have 0 expectations, but just don't have expectations of the expectations. Don't have expectations that it will go smoothly 100%, or it needs to go this way or that way, or this should be done this way, or that person should have said this or done that. It's just the fact that if you hope to go into the office and have 12 clients and you don't, that it's okay. That if you go into the office and you have 30 clients, then that's okay. If you go into office and have 0 clients, or the lights are off, the electricity is out, the phone's not working, the water runs purple, that it's okay. So it's not that it's not having hope. You can have hope. We all have hopes and dreams and wishes. But we shouldn't be holding on to them where we want that hope or expectation to be exact and static and unchanging. Because nothing in the world is unchanging. Situations change, people change, life changes, the world changes, things come and go, right? They're not static, they're not always there. So our happiness in the world is contingent on our ability to accept change, to accept things will not always be as we want them to be or as they are.
So can you be disappointed then? Like in your example, I go to the office and I've got 10 people penciled in and we show up. Can I be disappointed and say, well, shit happens and then just forget about it? Or do I have to just be like, okay, whatever?
If you were able to just let it go and be it, then you would have no disappointment. Disappointment is just you allowing your expectations to take over.
So don't have emotions toward it?
Don't have attachment to it. It's kind of have an emotion, but you don't allow the emotion to take over. Don't allow anger to take over. Don't allow the hate of people not showing to take over. Instead, like we're doing an exercise, if you're feeling angry, there is anger in me. I'm aware of anger. And figure out why and what you can do about it. Otherwise, if you just stay angry the whole day and start throwing crap around and papers around and drinking at work or whatever it may be, you're just suffering. It's about acceptance. You can have desires, you can have expectations, you can have wants and needs and hopes and dreams. Just don't expect them to go all perfectly fine. And if they don't, then that's okay. If they do, then that's also okay.
It's not a good day, it's not a bad day, it is just a day. That is what my psychology professor used to say. And I used to say have a day, and people would think that it was rude that I would say have a day to him, but me and him, we had an understanding together that
Right.
we're just saying, we're here. And that's something that we at least happy for, is that we're still here.
Right. It's not a good day and it's not a bad day. Right. Because if you say, oh, today's a bad day, you're going to forget about all the things that were not bad. Right? There's good and bad in every single day. But if you focus more on the bad, then it's going to be a fully bad day. If you acknowledge that there's bad and also acknowledge that there's good, then you have a day. Right? So I got into a car accident last Friday, totaled my car. Obviously I'm alive. I was telling Abel, because he's a lawyer, I was like, listen, I expect you to give me like 50K from this accident. And he's telling me about the limits or whatever, there's like a $30,000 limit. But, so I've been telling myself, okay, I'm going to be expecting 30,000 minimum. But I got my like settlement letter for my car yesterday. Was it yesterday I told you? And they're paying like almost 25, right? I'm like, okay, well, it's 5 less than what I expected. I was like at least expecting enough to, buy a whole new car. That was an expectation. My expectation was not met. I'm like, okay, that's fine. It's enough. It's enough, right? It's not what I wanted, but it's enough. It's there. It happened. It could have not happened at all. They could have given me $0 back, right? They could have said it was my fault, and it wasn't. But I could have gotten nothing at all, right? I had expectations. Their expectations not to pay. What insurance company wants to pay out? Nobody wants to pay out, right? So they're already expecting to give you 0. You're expecting $1 million, right? So your expectations are not met, their expectations are not met. Instead, there comes to what actually is, which is the settlement level of 25,000, right? So that's how we need to look at things. There's always 2 sides to everything. There's our expectations, there's other, us and other, right? Neither are right. As long as you're able to say, my expectations are not correct, their expectations are also not correct. What is correct is what actually is.
That's also just one part of it that you're not done yet.
I'm not done yet, but
Now, if you were to start doing these classes in a neck brace or something, that might.
I'm gonna start walking all limping. I know, right? Yesterday, thankful because I got pretty bruised up because the airbags deployed. But yesterday I woke up and it was finally the first day I was able to like move without any pain because I've been hurting, like my back was hurting. So I woke up and I literally thought I was dreaming because I didn't feel any pain. And so I actually woke up and I'm like, oh wait, there's no pain. There's no pain. Then I get out of bed, I'm like, oh wait, no, there it is. But my expectations at that point were also dissolved. Anyway, the point of Buddhism in general and meditation is to see things as they are, right? We all have ignorance. Ignorance here doesn't mean stupidity. Ignorance means not knowing the truth, not knowing what is. And so wisdom is knowing what is. Wisdom is seeing things as they are. You have expectations were not met. That's how things are. You can't change it. Maybe you can. But in that very moment, in that exact moment, you probably have 0 control, right? So when things don't go your way, if people don't do the things you want them, or people didn't say the things you wanted them to say, that's it. It already happened. There's no going back. There's no changing them. So all you need and can do is accept things as they are. My car got totaled. I wish it wasn't, because I was like 3 months away from paying it off. I know, right? It's just, but there's no changing that now. It already happened. I can't go back in time and untotal my car. It is what it is. There's no point in being mad about it. I'm more upset about the payment than the actual car being totaled, right? Because I was so close to getting it paid off. But it is what it is. right? I accepted the fact, and now I'm getting money to actually pay it off, so that's fine. I have to restart the whole process of payments, but whatever. That's life. There's no reason, there's no point in getting upset and staying upset about it, right? It is what it is. It is what it is. I need to get that tattooed somewhere. Okay, so we will do our sitting meditation now. So stretch out if you need to, get comfortable. welcome back. I forgot to mention that our objective for the meditation today was on loving kindness and compassion, so hopefully you just naturally did that on your own, since that was the whole point of today's class. But anyway, now we're a little over time, but any last minute questions or observations that you'd like to share? So we're all perfectly saints. And what? No, I'm sorry, what was the last part? And what? And what? You most certainly have control over your own mind, supposedly. What?
I was going to say that from Buddhist, I don't think you can control other than yourself. And the only thing you can control is your mind and yourself. And we think you can control the whole world. You don't even don't try to. You don't have power to decide whether or not you can control. You have power to decide you can control yourself. Right. So that if you're taking that's but if you're using the part of yourself and you can't control the rest of the world, that's almost impossible.
Right.
Control kind of suggests that you're going to set it up so that you can predict what it will be in the future. Like down in the river, in a million years, the dam will be dust, and the river might still be there or not, or it might be a mile that way. So you don't know. So maybe influence is a good word. We can use positive influences of things. And positivity to the causes and conditions, right? And then that helps bring out a more positive outcome.
Right.
But we never know. We can't control what the outcome is going to be.
Right, we cannot exercise and come from what our physical cells are working in.
Exactly.
But we have to choose if we want to exercise.
My little nugget for today is that it's okay to have expectations, but know that the suffering comes when the reality does not live up to your expectations, and then that's where you just have to manage how you react to the situation, manage your level of suffering, and just be aware that there is suffering, and it's how you manage it that's going to make the difference.
Absolutely. Good. Yeah. There's no, like you're mentioning, there's no control out in the world. There's only control of how you control your own situation. Good. Okay. We'll leave it at that. And we have one more class, I can't believe it, until our, right? Yes. One more? Yeah. One more class, and then our big retreat. Expect everyone to be there, here. On the 10th. Huh?
Objects of mind, I think that's what we have. Objects of mind.
Yes. Objects of mind, our last class. And then our retreat. Which we're going to put everything together. Full circle. With 6-7 hours of meditation, so you have plenty of time. It sounds a lot, but it's not really. It's not that bad. Vinny's been here, Leon, they can all... It's not one continuous meditation, so...
When yourself says, I don't want to do this meditation. That's what we're dealing with.
Right. You're hyping yourself out of something instead of hyping yourself up to something.
It's just as intimidating as a physical task, like a marathon, because I've run several marathons, and this is just as intimidating the thought of an all-day meditation.
But it's easier. I mean, I've done several marathons too, and I've always hated them. I never really liked marathons, but I did them because they're for good causes and whatever, so I forced myself to go through them. But it's like starting anything new. Like once you start it and you get into it, after a while it just becomes okay, becomes tolerable, becomes easy, right? And so I always say, oh, I don't want to do this marathon. But once I start, I'm like, okay, I'm feeling good. It's nice outside. This is great. It's fine, right? Like, so after you get over the initial hump of not wanting to do something and actually do it, then it becomes easier to do.
I remember another good thing too was about the title of the article was "Doing Things Badly," and the basis of the story was about how important it is just to start, just to do something. And that expectation of I can't do it unless I'm doing it right or perfect or whatever the standard is, that really affects me.
Yeah. But anyway, it'll be good. It'll be a good experience. The only setback. That's what I'm looking for. The only moment about it, I guess it would be waking up early, because it's 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So depending on where you live, it'll be depending on how early you have to get up to be here. But once you're up and you're here, like, okay, I'm here, right? Like, it's just done.
That's another example of how your mind is trying to trick you, saying,
Right.
the person that sets the alarm the night before is not the same person.
Right.
So your mind's like, no, just don't want to do this.
That's right.
You don't want to do it so early, you can sleep. Then you get up early and you go, why don't I get up early every day? I'll see the sun come up. It's beautiful. It's just like, and so that's your lesson. So that when the little voice comes up and you say, no.
That's so funny, because I think about that all the time. So usually, so we wake up at 4:30 in the morning every day, right? And so I'll do our morning chanting and meditation. And I used to go to the gym right after, right? And so the night before, I would get my bag set up and everything ready. And in the morning when I'm done with meditation, I look at the bag and I'm like, yeah, I'm not the same person that wants to go to the gym anymore. So I just go back to bed. But I was thinking, like, if I just set my bag and say, hey, it's ready to go, all you got to do is just change and go. That'll, like, motivate me. I'm like, I know, right? So, yeah. So I'm guilty to say I haven't been to the gym in a while, but I need to go. If I want to live to my prime age of 108, that's my goal, I probably should be working out.
The best thing is to cook really good food and healthy.
That's right.
That's the best part.
Good. Alrighty, so we will close up, and then I'll see everyone for last class, and then tomorrow if you're here for service, and of course on the 10th for a retreat. On April the 4th, we have our Venerable Abbot's birthday / our 15th anniversary of the temple, so it'll be a pretty big celebration. So I hope everyone is able to make that. It's on the 4th. The 10th was our retreat, and then the 18th, we'll have a 3 refuge and 5 precept ceremony for a handful of our members that are making the decision to commit to the path of Buddhism, so they become official Buddhists. So we have an exciting month of December. Yes, sir.
I mentioned that we also have our Buddhism 101 class Tuesday night at 6:30.
Yes, we first and third. Right? First and third.
First and third, meditation is second and fourth, and 101 is first and third.
And I think we only have a couple more classes of Buddhism 101 too anyway, before our break. In January 21st, we'll have Lunar New Year celebration here. That's a Saturday. It's one of our biggest, busiest holidays of the year.
If you've never heard 16,000 firecrackers go off, you want to be there. If you've never seen a dragon dance, you want
And a dragon dance, that's right.
the 14th.
No, 21st,
21st, I'm sorry.
January.
January. It's the lunar New Year.
Or Chinese New Year, whatever you want to call it.
Are you still going to do the bunny races?
It's the year of the rabbit. This year is the year of the tiger. And the next year is the year of the rabbit. And the year after is the year of the dragon. That's my year. So I'm going to expect a big mache dragon over here.
You go with those expectations.
I know, right? That's my expectation. But since I'll probably be making it, it's okay, because I'll be fulfilling my own expectation. All right. Well, I will save on the next class. Thank you. Namo Shikya Buddha.